Welcome to our full moon tarot reading for y'all. It's a full moon in Leo, and that does mean it's an Aquarius season, which does mean it's in January, February by the time you receive it. So I am in the cozy sweater I have, and absolutely am in sweatpants.
Same, same.
Um, Yeah, it's sleepy season and we're here honoring our rest by making this delightful process as easy as possible on ourselves. um I'm Ruth. I'm your grumpy crone. I am a student, a chatterbox, a writer. I live in New York.
I was like, what is that sound?
It's the mixture of sirens and then there's like an airplane.
Just on the street outside of your building.
Emergency landing. It's fine. Everything's crazy here.
It's like only when you talk.
I would shut my window, but the heating system in New York in these pre-war buildings was made for the Spanish flu, the other pandemic, the last one. And they made it so that it was so hot that you could keep your windows open for better ventilation, which is still a good thing with COVID, but boy, is it brutal. Anyway,
I did not know that.
yeah, I just found out about the whole Spanish flu connection too. I just thought everything was dumb here, but it turns out sometimes it's dumb for a good reason. Aw. And that's the end of my introduction of myself. Sometimes I'm dumb, but it's always for a good reason.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm Sanyelle. I love introductions. I'm really good at them. I am a magic practitioner, a tarot reader. I love being a hermit. It's my soul card and it's pretty much my soul's purpose. And I'm an Aquarius, so it's my season, my time to shine with a Leo rising. So really excited for this full moon.
I love that. In case someone on the planet somehow escaped the fact that I am a Leo, FYI, it's true. And yeah, I was thinking about the Leo vibes that are present in this particular full moon, in this culmination of Leo energy in deep in Aquarius season. And Leo is always about like accepting yourself and shining, being the star that you are, however that may be. And Aquarius is very much like let your freak flag fly, like be a weirdo, go down the rabbit hole, no one's a human. And basically how we can best accept who we are and what aspects of ourselves are being asked for our love, compassions, compassion, patience, or perhaps just like an interest, like a renewal of that energy, or like digging up of that energy. So I thought it might be a cool thing to ask the cards about. What do you think, Sanyelle?
I love it. I have a deck that I thought really embodied this energy. It's the Modern Witch Tarot. And I love this deck because of just the diversity. It's very like millennial-esque. Um, just everyone is kind of like punk. There's a lot of non-binary representation, queer representation. And so I thought that this deck would really bring the vibes.
I love
And
it.
what deck did you bring?
I thought that who better at accepting who they are and just owning who they are and being badasses than the Golden Girls.
Yeah.
I love this deck so much. It has very traditional tarot imagery, but then
Hmm.
it's all, well, as it says, a look into your future from the Lanai. So it's very 80s, 90s. Miami like vibes. It's just super delightful. Like, oh, everything is it's so, and it has all the different characters throughout. Um, so yeah, there's I figured that would be a good one for us.
I love it.
Before we pull cards, our cocktail for the full moon is not really a cocktail. It's just hot chocolate in my Wonder Woman cup because you know what? I'm very impressive for getting out of bed. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we drink from our Wonder Woman cup. If you really feel like spicing up, I just personally like in the winter, sometimes my bones are so fucking stiff. This is this is 35. The drinking doesn't always sound appealing, you know? Just drinking some good old fashioned hot chocolate. But if you want to zhuzh it up, vodka, easy choice. You know, vodka's for bringing alcohol into the picture without any flavor, and hot chocolate's delicious. So sure. Uh, wouldn't recommend gin. Not so much gin. Not at all. Um, maybe bourbon though. Bourbon could work. And you could also do like a nice like aged rum if you like. And if you want to harken back to my college days, I'm sure they still sell whipped cream flavor. Well, no, it was vodka that was in whipped cream in the form of whipped cream. It was alcoholic whipped cream. So if you can get your hands on that, I mean, why not?
Yeah. That sounds delicious.
Right. What messages are we getting from the lanai? I love it. I also love it because it's like this bright, warm place too. Okay, so for the Nine of Cups, we have this like beautiful Rose Nyland sitting there eating a cheesecake. Oh my God, she's so great. I love that we got Rose. Immediately
Hmm.
with Rose, I'm like, this is like the soft part of ourselves. You know, you could have gotten like Dorothy the badass, Blanche the slut, Sophia the terrifying like queen of the world. But instead we got Rose Nyland, who you know, what she lacks in intelligence from time to time, she makes up for in being fully accepting of herself and just moving forward in the most delightful way. Um, I think of this as like sort of a triumphant place to be. Um, there's like a sense that you've done a lot of work and that you've like you're able to sort of enjoy like the splendors of your it's like you know she just threw a banquet or something and now she's like taking a break um but like taking a break and enjoying things and being like happy as a cat uh
Yeah.
which is cute. I think in this sense it feels like how do you what do you find pleasure in, like what's in your cup, what you know what's your like tablecloth situation, um which what flavor of cheesecake are we having, like what is it that how can you like luxuriate in uh the like results of your hard work, and how can you like just really sit there and enjoy it. So I mean I suppose as far as like accepting a part of yourself, it's having the like it's interesting. Recently I've been thinking a lot about how we treat pleasure as something that we either have to work for and earn, or something that we like do or don't deserve. And I feel like this doesn't necessarily even like the Nine of Cups has a lot to do with luck too. Like you work for things, but it's not necessarily like all your hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like just accepting the part of ourselves that simply exists on this planet and gets to feel joy and pleasure and gets to
Mm-hmm.
like luxuriate in a cheesecake on a sunny day, like that's without questioning if we're worthy, without questioning if we've earned it. Um, but instead just accepting it as like, this is, I'm in a pleasant moment right now. And at other times I will be in unpleasant moments. And neither of these things is like, has a moral value to them, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, when I think about like, what about ourselves can we accept in this card, it's kind of like accepting that you don't deserve or do deserve pleasure. You just have it. That's
Yeah.
experiencing pleasure is just a part of being a human. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I just like think about the context in which the cheesecake would come out in that show. And I feel like it was always after just some bullshit. And they just gathered together and allowed themselves to indulge. Even Blanche, who was so preoccupied with, you know, her bod. So it's just that like the ability to treat ourselves in the midst of like uncertain or uneasy times. And I think too that it's interesting because the Nine of Cups and the Ten of Cups are both these like triumphant realizations. Like it's satisfaction, but I feel like the Nine of Cups is a more like I think about the Ten of Cups as like a spiritual fulfillment. And so the Nine of Cups is that lighter, not shallow, but it doesn't carry the same weight as the Ten of Cups. And so I do think it's just like embracing indulgence and like you said, just allowing ourselves to just like exist as creatures that are here to like enjoy this planet and to enjoy what we can of this like realm of existence. And so I think it is just like very sweet, simple pleasures like cheesecake and allowing ourselves just to embrace the fluff, like embrace fluff because fluff is great. We all deserve fluff.
It's true. And like you can't sit around and eat cheesecake forever. Like it is special because it's something that you eat when after you've had that hard day maybe, or just when it's just, time for gossip or whatever. And I think like the transient nature of pleasure it's something that like we hate, like we want to be happy all the time. That's very much like a Western, like this is, you got to just fucking be beaming happiness at all times. And that's not real. And it would be decently psychotic for that to be your emotional state at all times. But the more that we can allow joy and pleasure to come into our lives with an open hand that's like, I love this, but I'm not trying to hold on to it forever. I'm not trying to
Mm-hmm.
like have cheesecake because I'm sad. I'm not trying to have cheesecake because I'm like angry. Like you're not trying to like always have life's pleasures in moments where it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
But when those pleasant moments come, you accept that as well. Like it's not that I mean, like if you're down during the winter season, you might be like, it might be hard for you to see life's pleasures, but allow yourself to just take those in and not have that invalidate whatever pain or grief you might be experiencing as well. Because I know
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can feel disjointed, but It's not like, I think one of the most beautiful parts about a funeral is often the part where someone like first tells a funny story or like, you know, a joke about like the person who passed, and it's like everyone's all puffy cheeked and gross, and then
Mhm.
like they get that release of laughter that's so beautiful, that like, and it's so genuine, and it feels like such a relief too to your nervous system. Like it's a slight balancing. And you know, a day you go to a funeral is not, it's out of balance and grief ultimately, but you still get to enjoy these like sweet moments, even in the night, even in the darkest times of the year, even in grief filled times. So yeah, get your cheesecake on.
Yes. All right.
As I drink hot chocolate.
Ooh, this is interesting. The Emperor.
Yaddy.
Uh, I always struggle with the Emperor because I feel like we see just the worst forms of emperorness in this world. And I love that this particular emperor um, is horned and just looks like the devil. But I love that because the devil is such an earthy character. Like the earth is the devil's domain, cast out of heaven, just walking the earth. And the emperor, when in right relationship, is very connected to the earth in a way that allows them to be like just. But then, so like, I just think about everything in the lens of like I'm trying to use that decolonial lens. And that idea that the emperor is the mediator between like the people and the resources is really fucked up because
Ding ding
like
ding.
we don't need a mediator between us and the resources. Like it shouldn't be that we have this like even benevolent person who gets to decide how to dispense justice or how to dispense like resources. But that's the world that we live in which there is so much mediation unjustly between like ourselves and our resources. And there are power dynamics everywhere. And I think that the emperor is like a call to be aware of power dynamics and aware of the power that we hold in relationships in the world that we live in. And like we can acknowledge that hierarchy and power dynamics are kind of like fucked and usually are best avoided. But we live in the structured system. And so when we do have that authoritative position, like how do we handle authority? How do we handle power? How do we wield things as justly as we can while acknowledging that we're dreaming of worlds where emperors don't exist?
It's interesting. The emperor is affiliated with your favorite sign with Aries. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the horns that it has are like kind of
The
alluding to
Rams.
the ram's, yeah, to
Yeah.
the ram's horns. And when I think of Aries, uh they, you know, you can infuse toxic masculinity into any sign. And if you do it with Aries, it's going to look pretty traditional, like what we think of like a narcissistic, toxic masculine kind of vibe. Whereas like Pisces is like a soft boy, like we got, we have different types of it, different flavors of fuckery. But there's always that aspect. But I think like Aries, what Aries vibes brings to us on the planet is this initiation and hello, I'm here. And you can almost imagine like going through the ruins of like an old castle, and like the person with the Aries vibes is like, fuck yeah, I'm sitting down on this throne, and is like kind of making light of it too, but it's just like, hell yeah, this is me, and just kind of embracing their power and their presence, their own presence. And when I think of the, any of the like first few cards of the Fool's Journey of the major arcana, they can talk about our relationships with other people, either having an emperor over you or having an emperor, being the emperor yourself, but they can also be seen as like insights into your own ways of being, and just in your relationship with yourself. So I don't know, when I see the emperor, it's kind of like, how are you owning who you are and what you are showing up to the world with? Like what makes you want to like plop down on a throne and like lightheartedly be like, haha, I'm the ruler. Like, what is it that you rule? What do you rule at? Like, so 90s. You rule. um but like, what is it that you are really, basically, like, what is it that you excel at? What is it that's so natural for you? um I mean, we've talked about this a little bit in the last podcast, but like that, like wanting people to be more and more who they are and flex into who they are, and not be like, spiritual growth is linear and we're all headed to the same boring state of nirvana or whatever you want to call it, perfection. Instead of all that mess, just accepting who you are and going, I'm the ram, or I'm this or that. But what is it about you that you feel really like, that you own about yourself, and perhaps those things that like need more owning too? Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think the best description that I have read about Aries that made me appreciate Aries energy a little bit more was just that, like, Aries is springtime, and springtime is like all of these like newborn animals, and it's just like baby birds, and how baby birds just sit there and scream and scream and scream to be fed, regardless of attracting any kind of predator. And it's just like, I am here and I deserve to exist. Like, I have a right to be here. And so, like, I don't know, it's really hard for me to separate the emperor from the inherent hierarchy. But if it's about like the fact that we all deserve to be in our own power instead of having power over other people, like, what does that look like for us to step into our own power in a way that's not about rulership or authority?
Hmm. I mean, and it's interesting because even when we do have power in like a healthy way, we do have power in our relationships, but not over other people. There's
Yeah.
sort of there is power that's wielded though. Like, yeah, I mean, like if there's some kind of conflict or something, like you using your communication skills, your persuasive skills, perhaps, like you're able to state your case and exert your power. And that doesn't mean you have power over others in a really like dominating way. But you are exerting your power, and you are saying, and I love what you said, like you're demanding, I'm here and I deserve it all, in a sense. Like there's not even a question of deserving it. It's just like, of course I'm here. I mean, it's cute how that kind of goes hand in hand with the like deserving
Mm-hmm.
or not deserving of um pleasure. Like the Aries vibes are very much like, whatever I have, I should have it. Like there's
Yeah.
no question about it. And I think that that is like, to some degree, I mean, we can see it as perhaps how we are so challenged in our society right now with demanding our needs be met by the emperors that be. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a way that we show up and exert our power, is by like literally banding together and fighting stupid systems where that are based on hierarchy and colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
coloniality.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Can I see that card again?
Mm-hmm.
I love it though. Like the queering of the emperor is really,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not like tied to men or even masculine energy as we know it. It's just strength and wisdom and being able to take ownership over yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
perhaps the coloniality of the emperor as we know it is just because they this like person who was really in charge of himself decided that he needed to be in charge of other people too.
Yeah.
Fun card.
Mm-hmm.
So being asked to accept some very lighthearted and some very heavy-handed
Yeah.
energy. Not to be too much in the binary about it. I mean, should we pull a third secret way, a third secret card?
Sure.
Um, so I have this beautiful Supra deck. It's like based off of Jungian archetypes. And I thought it might be fun to pull a card about this as like what's coming up in our collective psyche that is asking for that kind of, perhaps for the light to be shined on it, whether that's in a exposing way or a dance for the crowd kind of way. Oh, and here we go. We got conflict. Interesting. This is too real.
Speaking of Aries energy.
Yeah, speaking of Aries energy, the god of war, we've got conflict here. It's interesting. I feel like I've been trying to be a little bit more on top of things that piss me off recently. And instead of letting it stew and just being like passive and then passive aggressive about it, I've been trying to just like talk to people when things bother me, but then trying to talk to them in ways that I would want to be talked to. And there's the catch, because I know I'm a sensitive baby. And if someone comes up to me and it says like, you did this thing, I'm like, my ego, speaking of Leo vibes, excuse me. But it's interesting. I like this conflict in the way that it's here. It's obviously this like traditional war. And I don't know, something we're reading about in our living systems class is about how there's like the non-ethos of war, that there's no ethics to be found in war, and how that's changed our society. Because for us, we think, all's fair in love and war, right? We think that like when we're at conflict, we just don't have to be moral people anymore. Like all of our morality that we show in times of peace to each other and in ourselves goes out the window because it's war. And
Mm-hmm.
then that inevitably has changed the way that we relate to each other, and like how many messy friendships and breakups and that sort of thing happen when we like approach conflict with this like lack of ethics, basically. um so yeah, I mean, thinking about conflict, shining the light on conflict is a big one. It's difficult for all of us all the time.
Yeah. I saw something on Instagram today about how there's like cycles of conflict and how it's like we don't see enough examples of reparation from conflict. Like there is the breakdown that causes the conflict, and then you enter into the cycle of repair. And I know that I'm like very conflict avoidant. And a lot of times, like, I like swallow my truth. And because the breakdown is so scary, and I don't feel like I've had a really good model of how to enter into repair to someone with someone. Um, and like on a, it's just like so interesting to think of all of the things that we're in conflict with in our world and our society. And I definitely like don't see repair as like an option. It's like, oh no, this just needs to break down and stay down. Like there's no repair in certain like cultural societal dynamics. So it's interesting to think about the macro and the micro with conflict. Like, yeah, I just don't see resolution for certain conflicts. And it is just like that it has to be broken. Um, and then, yeah, just the complete lack of modeling of like actual repair and conflict on a micro level and within communities, especially like with cancel culture, where it's just so easy when there's conflict to be like, delete, like you can literally delete someone from your existence because of conflict. And so, and I think that's a huge problem with the left, that cannibalism of it's just like there's no, we don't engage in healthy conflict at all. It's just cancel culture and echo chambers. And that's not how real community is at all. Like real community requires repair.
I think too, though, there's like, we're not meant to be, or perhaps it's just sort of impossible for us to be in close community with everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like thinking about the Zapatistas, like we want to create a world of many worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, there has to just be this like massive amount of tolerance for so many different ways of being. And I think perhaps when we're talking about decoloniality too, there's always this binary of what's right and what's wrong. What's the
Mm-hmm.
best way to live our lives and what's harmful? What's not harmful, what's harmful, as if you can just like live without creating harm. Like we have these huge binaries, and that's part of what keeps us so separate and keeps us at conflict with other people. And if we can sort of embrace how nuanced everything is, then maybe we find ourselves in a place where so many of our conflicts become irrelevant and or just put in their place of importance. um I mean, it makes me think about like it makes me think of like how when you like go on a hallucinogenic trip, like you start to see like everyone and everything around you as a part of you. And that's rooted in reality, much more so than how, and it's funny because it's like, I wonder what folks saw back when that felt more real in general in society. But like, we are not separate from each other. And a conflict with anyone outside of us is a conflict within ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how do we find peace and acceptance, even though you don't get to a point of like world peace. That's not because time marches on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even if we had at this very moment, no one's fighting. Well, thanks for joining us for our wintry Leo full moon, Aquarius vibes, tarot reading.
Yeah. Go have some hot chocolate, eat some cheesecake,
Cheesecake.
and fucking fight somebody.
Yep, fight a bitch. Go and conquer worlds. No, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Conquer yourself.
Conquer your inner realms.
Bruh. Up next, our guest, Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh my God.
I feel like you, whenever we're trying to close, you always say, oh my God, in that exact tone. Get something stupid that I say. It's like well documented now.
Yeah. That can just be our closing every time. It's just being like,
oh my God.
oh my God.
Whenever you get to the point of saying, oh my God.
And that's a wrap.
Yep, it sure is.